Nassau Hockey Podcast, brought to you by the Hockey Writers.
What's going on, everyone, and welcome to episode 37 of the Nassau Hockey Podcast, brought to you by the Hockey Writers Podcasting Network. I'm James Nichols, and as always, I'm here with my good buddy John Zella and the official third member of the show, Joe Pantorno, AM New York. What's up, guys?
Happening. Great to be back.
Not a whole lot. Good break here. We got some news to talk about.
Yeah, definitely some good news, some sad news. We'll get to it, but it feels like forever, by the way, when we don't record for a full week and then we come back that second week. It's like,
it's
Joe,
nice.
You're here once a month, so you must be like, I was here last year.
I was a single man before we did this last show.
That's true. That's true.
How was your wedding?
Congratulations.
How did it go?
Thank you. It was fantastic. The day was great. The weather was superb for November, and nobody got sick.
That's the good stuff that we want to hear.
Everybody was safe and healthy.
Let's start with some around the NHL news that we have going on. So first thing I want to know, and Joe, this really is for you. What's going on in the NBA for next season, and how might that affect how the NHL conducts its business? Just because we're at a standstill right now. We really don't know what's going to happen. Apparently they're starting to talk again, but give us a little insight. What do you got?
Yeah, so it's pretty convenient that we're talking about this today, Tuesday, because training camp actually started for the NBA. So everybody's in a great mood in basketball land. I actually just finished speaking with both Tom Thibodeau and Steve Nash earlier today. So everybody's super excited because exhibition starts in a little over a week, and they get regular season basketball on December 22nd, and they'll have a 72-game season, and it goes into July and maybe August even at the latest, and everything's hunky-dory. Negotiations between the NBA Players Association and the league went pretty seamlessly in terms of putting together the parameters of the economics. So basically, to keep it as short as possible, the typical escrow withholding of like 10% will remain in place. And if there is a need to reduce player salaries any further, that's actually spread out over the next 3 years. And this is where the NHLPA should be taking notes, because this is really the point of contention right now. It's all coming down to dollars and cents, as much as we want to think that it's going to come down to health and safety and things that actually matter to, say, the consumer or the fan, as novel of an idea as that is. But the NHL sent two proposals to the NHLPA a couple of days ago, where either it's a 25% escrow cap and a player salary deferment of about 20%, or a 26% player salary deferment and a 20% escrow cap. Either way, NHL players for the 2021 season will be getting 63% of their salary rather than 72% of their salary, which was originally agreed on when they extended the CBA by 4 years earlier this year. So it's a whole big mess right now, and the lines of communication aren't really open. It's trickling at best, but it's a horribly agonizing wait-and-see game right now, because all signs are pointing to the league not being able to start in January, even though we saw reports earlier today that was going to be the case.
Yeah, so the NHL claims it requires immediate relief beyond the 10% deferral and 20% escrow cap established for this season by both parties. It's asking for an additional 16% deferral and another 5% added to the escrow cap. So it's like there's so many moving parts going on here. Now, John Shannon tweeted on Monday that sources from both the NHLPA and the NHL confirmed that there have been discussions but no progress on revisiting the terms of this summer's memorandum of understanding on the CBA extension. And then earlier today, like you mentioned, Pierre LeBrun did, speak to how the target still remains early January. There's been no other date thrown out there. The last remaining date that we know is January 1, which Gary Bettman said at the NHL draft. But now they're starting to say early January, which could mean anything between the 1st and the 15th, really, in my mind, right? Does that pretty much sum it up?
Absolutely.
And I saw Andy Strickland earlier today, and I forgot to put this in our notes, that there are players that are delaying coming to their NHL cities. So that's not good news.
Sure.
So at first we kind of got someone came over from Europe, and we were kind of thinking, oh, okay, this is a good sign. Things are moving along. I forget who that was. Like we mentioned it a couple. Holmstrom. So, but that might not be the case, or it might not mean the good news that we thought. And that was kind of in the midst of things. So it seemed like a good sign, but yeah, I don't know what the problem is with the NHL. And I heard this on another show, and it's been rattling around in my mind. If the shoe was on the other foot, if the players were asking for this, it would be a non-starter. But the owners in the NHL and the league seem to just think that the players want, have their pocketbooks open all the time and their wallets open all the time to kind of take money. And I don't understand how that works. Like, I don't understand this relationship. Everything is a fight. It was like months ago, 4 months ago, the MOU, right? July. I forget what month it is. It's December now, as we record this, December 1st. And so is it the MOU is signed in July? Like, it's not a long time ago. How does that happen? What's the difference between this league and other leagues?
Right? And that's where this whole backpedaling is so concerning, because for once we thought that when all these sides came together and, the olive branch was extended just to get the 2019-20 season finished and getting hockey successfully into the bubbles, we thought that was going to be real progress moving forward in terms of labor relations. Yeah. Just to see this happening, it's so disheartening, not just for this year, but for the future, because it seems like this league, more than any of the other big four, those words lockout are always in the back of our minds here. So it's an unfortunate concept to be wrestling with right now, especially because there's so many fans that just want the sport back.
Right.
Yeah, and Greg Wyshynski also posted something yesterday that Bettman sprung the MOU on the Board of Governors, who unanimously endorsed it. It's believed some voted merely on Bettman's recommendation. Now, having subsequently read the MOU after it was passed, some are unhappy with it. You have to be kidding me. That is such a joke.
Yeah.
That is such an absolute joke.
It's tough because, like Larry Brooks brought up a good point the other day that, Mayfield's contract, take Scott Mayfield. He only makes $1.2 million a year, and he would be deferring $242,000 or 20.2% of his pay. To him, maybe it's not as harsh as, if I don't make $200,000 in a year, that's a lot to defer. Like, I would be upset about that. And I'm sure he's upset about it too. You have to think, these guys, they get their budgets, right? They sign their contracts and they make their budgets. I have this much money I could use this year. And yeah, I want a nice house. I want a nice car. I have to.
Well, he's got agent fees. There's all sorts of New York taxes.
Exactly.
There's a lot of stuff. Like,
that
he doesn't
1.2 million could easily be 800,000, and now you're taking 200,000 away from that. That's 600,000. He's like, well, how am I going to support my family? How am I going to pay for my house, my car? I get it from the player perspective. They were promised something, and now it's kind of like, well, now this whole thing happened in the world, which I get it, but this is how are they gonna get by?
And it is deferred. It's not like they won't
I get it.
But you want your money now. This is a lesson. If anyone wins the lottery, always take the lump sum. You want your money up front. You are smarter than getting it $5,000 a week or for life. Get the money up front, put it in an investment or something like that, and it'll be worth way more. You'll get way more out of it than that. And that's the same thing. They want their money up front. I don't blame them for that. And I think this is, especially now with the free agents that are still out there, not to jump ahead with Barzal, all of this could be influencing any kind of contract, because if they're like, okay, well, I'm signing a $5 million deal or $3 million deal, say the Islanders are going to try to get Duclair, a $3 million player a few months ago, now is going to be a little more expensive because they're like, well, I want my money up front. So you got to make up the difference. The contract's got to be a little bit more. So I get what I want now. Deferred is deferred. And escrow and all this other crap. So that might be influencing some of these negotiations, because if I'm Barzal or I'm any of these guys, I'm going to wait until I have a better idea of what everything means. Is it they're throwing out 13% or 12%? It's actually going to be 8%. I kind of want to know that. I don't want to sign a contract before I know anything more. So this just complicates it.
Yeah, definitely. So now this is the question now. What can the players leverage, right? Rule changes, like how do you negotiate a contract in this day and age, right? It's funny because I'm listening to a podcast earlier today with Brian Burke on it, and he was talking about his time as a GM. And he said he was like, things like a no movement contract or a no trade clause, like he's like, those things could be eliminated now. Like there are possibilities that these contracts are not going to come with these kinds of clauses because look, if you want to make $6 million a year and we want you as a player, but you're really the $4 million a year player, maybe we'll give you that extra $2 million, but now you have to sacrifice your no movement clause because if in 2 years in that 4-year deal, if we feel like it's not working out, you're going to have to be open to a move.
Yeah, it's again, it goes back to what you're saying about how, a player really can't make a true decision until he knows, number one, how much he's worth, how much money he's going to get.
Right.
And obviously, because again, if you're a free agent, obviously, in any other year, there comes the stress of not knowing where you're going to be living next year. So now add a pandemic to it, add a season where, you're picking up and going to a completely different city, and then you're not getting as much money as you originally thought. Like, this is a whole mess. So, yeah, I'm not really sure what the players could do in terms of leverage, or things in their contract, rule changes, things like that. But really, again, and I mentioned it before, and it's the word that nobody wants to hear, but it's lockout. There's going to be threats. Threats are going to be flying across the table if it keeps up like this. And if the players don't get what they want, ultimately, that's the nuclear option.
So what I did hear though is, all right, if I'm the players and things are going to be deferred and there's escrow and the word hockey related revenue, which may be one of the more boring things ever. But thinking about that, if I'm a player, what I heard was, how do we raise revenue? It's not going to be fans in the seats. How are we going to do that? And a while ago, now I don't remember when this was, but we were kind of talking about this in the same vein. And having heard Jeff Merrick say this on 31 Thoughts made me super validated. But I'll repeat it here. Ads on jerseys. Now, tastefully, the NBA does this, if I'm not mistaken. We may not like that idea. I don't think we do. But if it means not avoiding a lockout, that may be what needs to happen. Just because you're not going to have fans in seats, no one's buying hot dogs, no one's buying sodas. The reverse retro. I have to be willing to bet they saw this coming and they worked with Adidas to say this is good hockey-related revenue. We need something that fans can buy. They're not going to be coming in the stores. They're going to be ordering this online. But what, can they leverage rule changes? Can they leverage finding another way to make money? I think ads on jerseys and selling things a little bit. Again, the NBA does do this, right? It's small.
Yeah, it's just a little patch right on the corner of the jersey up top here, like over the chest. But again, the NBA seems to be the progressive, forward-thinking league of the Big Four. And I don't want to say that they're like the guinea pigs, but they see an opportunity to make more money, to bring in more revenue. And unlike, say, Major League Baseball or the National Hockey League, they take it. And
yeah.
It's the wave of the future. We obviously see it in Europe, whether it's soccer or hockey or basketball. We see it here now in the States with the NBA and the WNBA. It's only a matter of time. And really, it is prime real estate, a section of your jersey or the helmet, and there will be vendors and companies and businesses that will pay top dollar to get their product on that real estate. So, yeah, again, this is a clear and easy way of getting revenue that, these big leagues are turning down just for the sake of nostalgia.
Yeah, I think what Jeff Merrick had said was that, you think of the original 6 jerseys with these other patches on it, and you got to get over it. If you want to be able to play this game and everyone wants their money, because that's what it's about. This is a job for people. That's what needs to happen. Or, extra ads on the ice. They have gotten more creative with the video side of things, putting it on the glass, just for TV viewers,
right?
Which I thought was interesting. MSG does that. I don't know. I'm sure
I think everyone pretty much does that now.
No, but it's an interesting way to do it, and
Right.
if it's going to be a shortened season, there's going to be added expenses outside of the salary cap. And this kind of goes into the next thing that I'm going to say that we're going to talk about rather. Taxi squads, different things like that. There's going to be added expenses. The league as a whole, is it going to be the bubbles all over again? It's like the NCAA, right? They're hockey. They're trying to figure out how to get in different conferences to just go to a bubble for a month or a few weeks and just play games, and then go home and then come back. They're not much of a student athlete at that point. They're just making the NCAA money. But I suppose it's a different conversation. But I think we discussed last time that the players in the athletic poll were not super interested in a bubble.
Yeah, I mean, nobody wants to. We discussed, like you said last time, that a majority of them really said that they wanted nothing to do with a bubble. I think 20-25% said that they'd be willing. It's tough, but I think you're right, and I guess we could move on to what our NHL team is going to do. If they have to do some sort of a bubble, or how we saw on Sunday, the Broncos had lost all 4 quarterbacks due to COVID, and some were in contact. It's not that they actually had it, but they had to quarantine, and other sports have dealt with this to varying degrees. So it's tough. What is the plan of action moving forward? I'm not, and Joe, maybe you can answer this. What is the NBA doing as far as, are they doing a bubble? Are they doing something where they're realigning, the divisions?
Well, that's the thing, because the full schedule hasn't been released yet, and we've just been kind of teased with a few matchups here and there. There isn't going to be a bubble, and it's a big ask, obviously.
Right.
Nothing to do it for a few months, like we saw both the NHL and NBA do over the summer. But to do it from now till July or August, where you're 7-8 months isolated away from your family, obviously nobody's going to sign up for that.
Is it going to be like baseball, where they just kind of do it and adapt?
I would say it would resemble more towards baseball, where it's going to be a geographically driven schedule. Obviously, the divisional makeups will be different, like we've talked about even before. That all-Canadian division, a Northeast division, whatever it is. Where the Islanders, for example, for whatever it is, between 60 and 80 games, play exclusively the Rangers, the Devils, the Flyers, the Capitals, the Penguins, and 1 or 2 others that are nearby. And then in terms of keeping players healthy, or ensuring that a breakout won't completely derail the season, there has to be a taxi squad. NFL teams, at least the responsible ones, they quarantine at least 1 quarterback. The Broncos were not the smart team to do that, and obviously they paid the price for it. So those extra measures will have to be taken, but in the same breath, this also kind of works against that hope that we're going to see the league start in January, because there are so many things that you need to sift through, including this. Not only are you dealing with roster construction, but then all of a sudden you have to decipher a completely different, 2B roster, for example.
Right.
Just a taxi squad where, God forbid, the unthinkable happens and the virus does sweep through your locker room. You need to be able to, put a team on the ice, whatever, a day or 2 or 3 later. So it's a lot, but it's
that's what made me think of this. When I was writing yesterday and doing research for this episode. So the 4 quarterbacks go down, and there was a guy that played in college, a quarterback, like that was the thing.
That Royce Freeman.
So it's not like NHL teams have that, where like, oh, some goalie played, Pee-wee AAA goalie for the Long Island Gulls and blah 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 year. It's like, oh yeah, he's just gonna play goalie now. Like, that's not gonna work. And is another David Ayres situation gonna happen? How do you have an emergency backup?
Right, and the thing is too, when you think about it, the Broncos lost out on 4 quarterbacks, and they already have a roster that's double the size of an NHL roster. So they're going to have to do something with some sort of a taxi squad or expanded roster to be incorporated, because if they lost 4 guys in the matter of it happened quick. It was like, okay, one guy tested positive, another guy tested positive, and then these other 2 guys were near them. So everyone has to quarantine, and it's like, okay, well, now we don't have a quarterback.
Well, the Islanders signing Corey Shutter makes a lot more sense now. The Rangers signing a guy like Kincaid makes a lot more sense now.
Right.
You need a third guy that has NHL experience at the very least, even if he's not getting the playing time. And I imagine there's an opportunity for that third goalie to get time if it's the way that it's going. Even a 48-game schedule will be pretty condensed. So injuries are going to flare up. Like, aside from COVID, things are going to pop up all the time. So you kind of need that third guy. It's going to be very, it's not a 3-goalie system. They kind of know their thing, but with the AHL kind of up in, they don't know what's going on. It's up in the air right now. It's not like they're going to be playing. So the third guy's got to be with the team. The third goalie's got to be with the team. You need a guy like, even if Boychuk was staying, and we'll get to that story in a little bit. But even if he was staying and Andy Green, Noah Dobson, you kind of need 8 guys. You're going to need Thomas Hickey now. Everyone wanted to get rid of him. These guys are good. Now, their contracts will be buried in the AHL. That's my understanding, is if that is what happens, they'll be with the team, but their contracts won't count against anything until they need to play.
And again, this is just me kind of not really playing devil's advocate, but mostly spitballing. But such a concept like this with these taxi squads and these insurance factors for the pro teams, this should be seen as a lifeline for the AHL, where they should be able to go to the NHL and say, you know what, we're not going to travel with the teams, but put a season together, have us play in near the same cities at the same times as our NHL clubs, and God forbid something happens,
it's a good idea.
We're right there.
Well, that's a problem for teams like Vancouver and Utica. Exactly. Right, like those cross-border teams, and there's only a handful. I don't think there's all that many anymore. They've kind of all moved geographically somewhat towards each other, which is good.
We just saw that happen with the there was one AHL team that just got bought out, right? The Blues don't have an AHL team currently. Who has them now?
There are 30. I think there was a team sharing it, and then Vegas just got another one, and they've moved around so much I can't even remember. Like the Colorado Eagles moved up to the AHL or down to the ECHL, I forget. So it kind of bounces around. In New York alone, there was half a dozen at one point. Just AHL teams, and then they've kind of moved around. Where Adirondack is now ECHL, Utica's AHL, Rochester, Binghamton, Syracuse, and then you had Buffalo, New York, I was Rangers. There's a lot of teams. Then forget about like Federal League and all these other smaller pro teams. Up in this area anyway. There's a lot of hockey, a lot of pro hockey, which is which is kind of cool. A lot of opportunity. I don't think Long Island doesn't have, the metro area doesn't have any room for stuff like that, because then they have good junior teams and things like that. So, I was listening to a show some time ago, and they had said that the AHL teams would play matinee games, and then the NHL teams would play that night if they were going to be traveling. Keep them together, get them the ice time. I think that's the struggle right now. And I was doing, I think that's kind of our next little topic, and maybe I didn't add it, but the CHL is having some issues. A lot of them are pausing. The Q began play on October 2nd, and now it's on pause until January 3rd. WHL isn't even starting until January. The O isn't even starting until February. And we've all heard the news. We talked about it on here with hitting and not hitting, and the commissioner of athletics or whomever in Ontario. That was a problem. But then you got to think about player development. Some of these guys, good thing there's European leagues. Otto Koivula and all these guys began to play World Juniors. But that's not the opportunity. I think we retweeted today from our account on Twitter. That was a little redundant. But, we retweeted today that, the Worcester Railers players were getting just distributed to other teams now. Even if they didn't really have any real way to make the NHL squad, it's still development. You still have opportunity for guys to work their way up. That's always been the case. So it's really complicated. Player development and drafting and
it's tough.
Scouting is going to be difficult. I'm trying to stay on top of that. There hasn't been live scouting for a long time. So it's super complicated. I don't know how they're going to do it. Frankly.
Yeah, well, I mean, you were right before about the QMJHL team. They suspended its schedule through January 23rd, and that actually the league as a whole. But there was a QMJHL team that was Quebec based, and they paused due to rising levels in their city. And on Monday, the commissioner officially paused the season until January 3rd to allow teams and the league to come up with a plan for the second half. So, we see these things happen even in my own hometown right now, I have, certain schools aren't even open because they're in quote unquote red zones. And then there's orange zones with, a little bit of a lesser spike in cases. And then there's a yellow zone that's pretty safe and not many, if at all.
Yeah. Central New York's a lot like that.
Yeah.
We're in the same boat. Things close and we're in a yellow zone. And yeah, it's, I don't know.
Yeah. So
looking good.
There's a bunch of aiming start dates for everything all over AHL, CHL, WHL, OHL, QMJHL. Everything is just need to know basis right now. There's really nothing solid that we really know. And the crazy thing is, especially with the NHL, the target is for everything to really start within a month or two. So there's still so much. Like we've been asking these questions since literally the Lightning lifted the Stanley Cup. Like what's going to happen for next season? We still don't know. Like it's still a question. So
and they're not going to wrap it up in 2 weeks. That's kind of what I've been saying. There's no way this gets wrapped up by the middle of December to start in January.
Right.
Listen, it has to take 2 weeks alone just for these guys to quarantine. So I don't know.
And then you need a training camp.
Yeah, exactly.
The league and the players aren't even talking.
Right.
They had like a 9-day. I mean, granted, some of it was Thanksgiving, but there was like 9 days or 10 days in between a conversation about this. So it's not even. Not only are they worried about their salaries, which is a good conversation to have in hockey revenue and blah blah blah. Then you got to worry about setting up and agreeing on a bubble or a schedule or whatever, and then you got to get arena availability. Then that's got to get all started up. You got to get, I'm sure many of these people have been furloughed or since been laid off. Then you got to get all the staffing back. You can't just flip a switch here.
Yeah. I honestly, in my opinion, we'd be happy to have a season start on January 15th.
I still think February. I mean, it's going to be,
makes more sense.
They want to go as early as possible. And we mentioned this last time. They want to go as early as possible so that inevitably, especially if they're traveling, if something does rip through a team and they do need to postpone games, it gives them time on the other side. It gives them kind of buffer before the playoffs start.
Right.
Unless the games don't matter. Unless it's a Detroit, Florida, and they're probably not. Oh, they might be in the same division. That was like a weird central division. If they were in the same division or Detroit, Pittsburgh, or whatever the case is, and it doesn't matter. The game doesn't matter. They might just cancel altogether. I don't know what that means for a TV deal. I know that's coming up. The Olympics start presumably in July. They have to wrap it up before that. They do not want the playoffs competing with the Olympics. Yeah. So that kind of throws another wrench into too. That end date, I believe it was July 15th or something, mid-July. They have to get that done. Right. So the earlier they start, the more they don't have to push anything back. They just have a buffer. So that might make it so that the season's shorter to begin with. It gives them extra time. So every week passing makes it so they're not going to extend anything. It's going to be the time period is a time period. Depends on how many games they can get in. And the players probably have to agree with that. It's one thing to play 4 games a week most of the time. It's another thing to play 4 games a week all the time, every week. They have to have a number of days off a month. That means no practice, no time, at home on the ice.
Right.
They're going to be super pissed again if that means that, an off day is just in a hotel. They can't go out. They can't go golf. They can't do this. I don't know. It doesn't, I can't, it just pisses me off, this league. It just makes it seem like they just can't get their shit together.
It all leads to everybody too calling for another asterisk to be put next to this Stanley Cup, because it was like, oh well, it was half a season, it was a condensed schedule, and the realignment of the divisions, yada yada. It's just all gonna be it's a mess. Honestly, it's a mess right now, and it stinks because nobody could have saw any of this coming, and we've said that before, but we're almost 9 months into this now, and it's kind of like you gotta know ahead of time that there needs to be a plan of action in place for this kind of thing.
I think oh, sorry, Joe, go ahead.
No, go ahead. It's just
I'm wondering, the other leagues are kind of pulling the trigger and adapting as they go.
Right.
Is there something to be said about the league, the NHL, and the players and the Players Association being a little more gun shy and being like, well, we don't want anyone that gets sick because we don't know what the long-term effects are yet. Do we wait out until there's a vaccine? Is there something to be said there? I kind of, a part of me thinks, all right, they're playing it safe. I mean, don't get sick. It's like the same thing about not going to a restaurant or this, or calculated risks for getting together for holidays. And which one do you do? Do you skip Thanksgiving and cross your fingers for Christmas? Say, okay, we're going to hit pause on this. No one's going to see each other, but, we'll hope the numbers go down. But it's going to be the opposite. Numbers are only going to go up in the next few weeks. So that might not help. Is there something there? I don't know.
Yeah, it's that's like the ultimate hardball, I guess, where you could use, the players could kind of present this health and safety concern as a way to, I guess kind of play hardball and really force the league's hand and say, we're not willing to come back and, play in these uncertain conditions unless we have X, Y, and Z. Yeah, this is just, like you said, they had all this time to make a contingency plan.
Right.
Very well knowing, because again, back in, February, March, when this came out, they knew, they said, it's gonna kind of go and
yeah,
going to be ebbs and flows to this.
Right.
There's going to be a second spike that's going to come towards the end of the year. As soon as it gets cold, or as soon as wintertime hits, or whatever it might be, it's not just going to go away. So it's just, what does it say about, Gary Bettman and the league offices and that of, other leagues too, where you couldn't figure it out, and why, they decided it felt like they took a vacation. They took a vacation, they came back and they said, okay, well, by the way, we're going to try and, screw you out of more money. And that's,
well, they knew I think, your point's well taken. And I've heard that a couple times.
Yeah.
You knew that this was going to happen, or it was at least potentially going to happen. It was a possibility. Why sign the thing without having like, okay, if we have 15% capacity in arenas, if we have 0% capacity,
right,
these are how the percentages are going to work based on these things. And this is how we're going to make that up. Here's hockey revenue. We're going to put ads on jerseys. We're going to put it on the ice. We're going to do this. How, as a professional sports organization, do you not have that figured out?
Honestly, it just sounded like the players had too much faith in the owners and vice versa. That's just the.
Well, they all signed the thing. I think
that's
the
what I'm saying.
And the players just were like, "Oh, we want to get the playoffs done, and
we'll figure it out later." And they had faith in each other that, okay, we'll figure this out later.
But they understood. I think they didn't need to figure it out later. They did figure it out. The issue that I have is that the league and the owners, they signed the thing, whether you read it or not. It's like the user agreement on iTunes or whatever you kids are using.
Right.
Like you either read it or you didn't. You're screwed, or whatever the case is.
I think the thing is that they signed the new CBA though without taking into account that this could still be happening.
And that's what the players are saying.
Right.
Okay, well, we signed a thing. I don't know why this is
they signed it.
Yeah, so I don't know, like, you can't come back now knowing that this was going to happen and be like, oh, we need more, we need to defer this.
So you're saying it's on the players?
No, I'm saying it's on the league. The players did what they had to do. They said,
oh, okay,
all right, we can live with this. I don't love it, but this is fine. And we're getting,
right.
Escrow goes up in year, was it 4 or 5 or 5 or 6? And this is deferred until then. And they're negotiating TV rights, whatever the hell is going on.
Yeah.
It's the league and the owners that signed it, that wanted their concentration was on the bubble. They probably thought, oh, well, we can put our thumb on the players later if we need to change something. And the players don't have any power here.
Right. If the equivalent of your boss came to you and said, okay, sign this is what's going to happen. And, we're going to give you whatever, we're going to pay you $80,000 a year, for the next 4 years. And, you sign your contract, and then whatever, 2 months later, they come back and say, Just kidding. We're gonna give you 55.
You'll get the rest later.
Exactly. That's why, it's one thing where, and this is a common misconception that we saw all throughout these negotiations with baseball, to a certain extent with previous lockouts. It was fans saying, well, if the players weren't being so greedy. That's a garbage notion. If the players are being promised something, you can't just put away what they were promised, what they signed, contractual obligations, for the sake of the fans. And I think that's where fans are getting greedy, where they think that, oh, well, you know what, they should just put that aside and perform for us. That's not how it works. And that's not how you would perform in your job either. And listen, obviously it's been this way a lot over the last 8 months. We've seen a lot of people lose their jobs. A lot of people have had to take salary cuts. And obviously, that sucks. But again, if you have the power to combat that, like the players do, you would do that also. So again, these are people's livelihoods at stake, and hopefully, again, this gets done sooner rather than later, because we're chomping at the bit here.
I did see something about that too, and I can't find the tweet. It was a similar argument, Joe.
Yeah.
It's millionaires arguing with billionaires. I know that's the common argument that happens, but it's the billionaires that are, why is it it was something along the lines of, why is it the labor and the workers that have to bite the bullet?
It's a tale as old as time here.
Yeah, they're not getting bailed out.
Yep.
So that's the thing. It's either they figure it out or they don't. And if they don't, then that means that there's going to be nobody playing this year, and that's going to lead to, unfortunately, the words that nobody wants to hear, like Joe said earlier. It's going to lead to a lockout. But I think it's time to move on to On the Island. We're going to talk about somebody who is actually not going to play anymore from this point on. Johnny Boychuk, our beloved defenseman who we acquired, 6 years ago now, from the Boston Bruins in a surprise trade that nobody saw coming, is unfortunately no longer going to be playing. Now, the initial report did say he is retiring. It came out a little bit later that he's not exactly retiring. He's just not going to be playing anymore. So long-term injured reserve is going to be for the remainder of his 2 years on the current contract he has. Now, the glaring question becomes, what does it mean for the contract negotiations with Matt Barzal?
Yeah, and that's the $1 million question, or maybe even $7 million per year question, because this obviously gives the Islanders that much more flexibility to go out and at least get a deal done, whether it's a bridge deal or not. The really popular thing that we've been hearing and that I've been hearing is that, that 3-year, $7 million per year average annual salary thing, carry him into, that next big payday if he keeps, going up, if he keeps improving and, being that all-star that we all expect him to be. But again, right now, before the Boychuk unfortunate news there, the Islanders had about $3 million in cap space.
Right.
Now with the $6 million that come off the books, that's at about $9 million. So they do have the parameters now to at least hammer a deal out sooner rather than later. But like we've been talking about all this time, I think it also depends on, what the players in the league are going to agree to. I think that's going to play a part in this. So, the sooner we find out an agreement of sorts, I think the sooner we'll see a deal struck. And, hopefully the parameters of the season are laid out early enough where that allows suitable time for both sides to negotiate a deal. Because again, they're working against the clock here too. I'm sure they don't want to deal with negotiations during the season. We've seen most players do that. So, hopefully it's a, get it done as quick as possible kind of thing.
So I believe it's 3.9 that they had, right? Something like that.
Yep.
And then 6, so, it's between 9 and 10 million. They still need to add Green. He'll be league min, 750. Martin needs a contract, probably $1 million. Maybe he'll come back cheaper than that,
which would be great.
Yeah. So then you're looking at, if Barzal's 7 or 8, then you're another $1.5 million. So you're at 9.5. You still have $500,000. What's going on with Andrew Ladd? So that might be the missing link here. And if Hickey's buried, and if Johnson's buried in the A and if Del Cole's buried in the A, that opens up a couple more. With or without Ladd. I'm kind of under the impression there's enough paperwork that Lou can do if he really wanted to get a Duclair on a little bit of a cheaper deal than maybe Duclair wants to take, although the recent conversations maybe throw a wrench in that with deferment and all that. Let's call it 2.5 or 3. I feel like there's enough paper transactions to make it happen. With or without Ladd going to LTIR, which, look, if Boychuk played the same that Ladd did, and they were shopping Boychuk all summer to get rid of him, whether they knew he was going to go on LTIR or not, my understanding would probably be that they were trying to trade him as an LTIR, that they were going to sweeten the deal. They don't have to have it on the cap either, but the Islanders need it off the books. Then they figure, okay, well, we can just put him on LTIR or he can retire, whatever the deal is. I imagine Ladd's in the same boat. He played in the playoffs. It's not like he isn't being shopped too. We saw some workout videos leading up to the bubble. The knees look okay to me. I'm not a doctor. So what the hell do I know? But he looked like he was moving pretty good. That doesn't mean he could play. We saw that in the playoffs too. He looks stiff as a board. So does he just go on LTIR or if he gets buried in the A, James, you might know it's better than me. I don't have cap friendly up right now. Ladd goes to the A or the contract's buried in the A. I don't know. Paper transactions, yada yada yada. There's $3 million. There's $3 million there. But again, well, yeah, and that that kind of brings up the taxi squad information. It depends on what kind of deal they can strike. You're gonna have to have a Hickey around. You're gonna have to have an AHL, a third goalie around in Corey Schneider. Now, it might not count against the NHL cap, but if someone goes down with COVID, is that LTIR for 2 weeks? Does that afford you that space? So that's where some of the complications come in. I have a feeling there's a move to be made. Lou is trying to paper transaction his way to opening up $3 million somehow.
In order to what? Acquire?
Sign. There's no way they're going to a shortened season. That this is a streaky team. A shortened season. If their window was open, it cracked open a little more. My opinion. This team can go on a run. We saw it, right? We saw them go through these playoffs. It was up and down. It was a little shaky against Philly. But they handled that. They gave Tampa some were saying they gave Tampa more of a run than Dallas did. I can agree with that as an Islander fan.
Yeah.
I'm not going to tell them that they didn't.
No, yeah.
So,
I
so you kind of think, if they're that close, these guys are not, it's a young team. They do have the Barzals and the Beauvilliers, and there's, Koivula's kind of sneaking up in there. There's a couple guys, Wallstrom, Bellows, whatever. Sorokin's the youngest goalie they have. NHL, it's good, right? They have, a few good players, but Anders Lee, Nelson, Eberle, some of these guys, not young, but they have time. Their window isn't closed.
Right.
They have to pick up a Duclair or something. They have to do something.
So bear with me here. I went to school for words and not for math. So, say right now, after the Boychuk money clears, the Islanders right now have what? About 9.9 million available?
Let's call it 9.5.
9.5.
Just to be safe.
So now say they're able to get Ladd onto LTIR. What does that add to it?
I think it's between 3 and 3.5.
So let's stay on the low end, say, 3.
Okay.
So that brings us up to about whatever. Let's say 13. We'll round up. Say that's 13 there. And then, John, you said a couple of different paper transactions where X, Y, and Z won't be able to stay.
Well, so Hickey.
Yes.
And we've done this math before.
Right.
So Ladd in the A he takes off $1.5 million. So they save $1.5 million on the cap.
Okay.
Let's pull up Del Cole, Ross Johnston.
Which would be 3.
And Hickey. Yeah.
So our grand total then, after all of those things, how much money would that leave the Islanders with?
Well, Ross Johnson his minor salary is still $1 million, so they don't really save anything there. Hickey, they don't save anything there.
Anything under $3 million, you're not saving.
Right.
So say the Islanders have, I don't know, $14 million to work with, and you have to sign Barzal for, say, $7 million a year right there. So that's $7 million off the book. So you're left at $7 million. Say you get Andy Green, you re-sign him, and Matt Martin, who you would think would take a hometown discount, take the league minimum. So that's another $7 million. So say that's another $1.5 million. Again, I'm not good at math. So that's $8.5 million. So that leaves us with $5.5 million to work with.
That's what I mean.
Yeah. Call before anybody, and it is a absolute hoper, dark horse, shot in the absolute dark. Call up Mike Hoffman.
Oh, of course.
Yeah.
Call him up. Say, we will give you 1 year, $5.5 million. It's a proven deal. It's a shortened season. Come here, help us win a cup this year, and then if you want to stay, well, then that's a bridge to cross when we get there.
And that I honestly, I don't hate that either. I mean, that moves Lee down. Let's just call Lee Peugeot.
Yep.
X. Komarov is still
Austin.
there too. Keep forgetting about that guy. So whatever that means. He's got a I don't know what I think he saves maybe a little bit if he's in the AHL. He saves $500,000 if his salary is in the again. And if they're doing taxi squads and he's still with the team and it just doesn't count against the cap, again, that's paper transaction kind of shit. We're not talking about actually sending them and they have to go play in the AHL. A lot of these guys with no movement, they probably accept that if they don't actually have to go on the bus and ride around and do that kind of thing. That means they're still going to be with the team, or there's expanded rosters, whatever the case is. I don't hate the Hoffman thing. That's a bona fide goal scorer. Am I weird in thinking I kind of want Duclair more?
No.
And I think that because I kind of want him on the roster longer.
Well, that's the thing.
You can sign him for a year,
right?
And then if he plays well, you keep him.
Well, that's the thing, because he's more appealing because of his age. He's going to be 25.
Exactly. So you get a guy in that third line.
Yeah, he can grow chemistry. He can grow with the team. He can grow with Barzal if need be. I mean, it just makes sense. And he's fast, right? We discussed this before. He was in the fastest skater competition just last year with Matt Barzal, albeit he lost, but he lost to the other fastest skaters in the league. So he's fast. He can keep up with the team. His makeup really is what they're kind of looking for. He's young. He can score. And he needs to work on his defensive game. Oh, yeah, right. We have Barry Trotz. So it all kind of works out. But
Duclair and Peugeot's not slow.
Right.
Peugeot, Duclair, and I'll steal something from Steve Dangle and Guy. It could be literally anybody on that third line next to those two. And it doesn't matter. It could be Hosang. It could be Dal Cole, as much as I don't want him there. He's a pylon. It could be Hosang, Dal Cole. It could be Komarov. It could be Bellows. It could be Wallstrom. There's 5 guys. It could be Ross Johnson. All season long, it could be Ross Johnson, Duclair, and Peugeot. You know what? I don't care. That's fine. It's Barry Trotz can play. Lou Lamoriello can play on the right wing on that third line. It's going to be the best third line they've had in a long time. And I think that's really important. Now, Lee next to Peugeot, I think, is also good. It's a different dynamic on that line, and you kind of want somebody like Hosang or Wallstrom there that can add that scoring threat. If it's not going to be Duclair.
That Peugeot and Lee combo would become a grind type line. But then, like you're saying, and I totally agree, if you add a Hosang or a Wallstrom, you're getting a little finesse, which is...
And you stick Lee in front of the net the same way that he is on the first line now. It's the same dynamic. Now Hoffman on that first line, you have a scoring threat line for a change. So you can have a middle six that's a little bit different than we're used to.
Exactly.
Where we're not necessarily depending on them the same way.
Now, here's the thing.
I think they have to do something, though. It's in a shortened season, they can easily make the playoffs. Even if in a tougher division, they can easily make the playoffs. And then from there, it's do the same thing again.
Well, that's the thing. So, what that paper transaction is that you're referring to, we're just going to put it out in plain words here. It's Ladd. Is he going to be the next Johnny Boychuk to I can't play anymore, guys. It's just not working out for me. My knees, they gave up. I can't do it anymore. Now, listen, I don't know. gun to my head says that Lamoriello kind of went up to Boychuk and kind of behind his back and was like, "Hey, listen, retire now or else." But whatever. Just that maybe that didn't actually happen.
That might be one of the more honest ones, I have to admit, because and Joe, you were on that call, so you tell us, how upset was he? How upset was Boychuk?
It was one of the tougher press conferences that I.
Yeah. No, I truly believe it was more genuine than not. Just because, listen, a lot of people have said, "Oh, Lou Lamoriello, he forced Boychuk to retire." I laugh at it as a funny joke. No, I don't really think Johnny Boychuk wanted to retire. I think he honestly has plenty of life left in him to play.
He's
hockey.
just too expensive.
He just and he just can't. With his unfortunate injury. We didn't know that his eye injury was as bad as it was. At first glance, he was like, "No, I'm fine. I can play," because that's the kind of person he is. That's the kind of player he is. He was like, "No, I'm playing. I'm fine."
Right.
We came to learn, in this unfortunate situation, it was a little worse than we thought. He even said there was one hit that he got, that he took, and he said that I should have seen it coming. I didn't see it coming, but I should have.
It was the Matheson hit.
Right, the Matheson hit.
It was against Florida that knocked him out.
Right. So the question now becomes, is there something like this going on for Andrew Ladd that's causing him to be as absent from the Islanders as he is, that he could be next, and would that make it possible for the Islanders to get someone like a Declare or a Hoffman?
I think it's yes, but it's a different conversation. I think, Ladd's going to come in and be like, "Look, I'm healthy. I can play." And Barry and Lou are going to go, "You are not seeing the ice."
Right.
So you have options here. I don't know if they can terminate a contract. That doesn't mean that he gets any money. But we got to figure, you're not playing. So we got to figure this out. You got to retire. You can go to Europe, you can, whatever the case is, but you're not playing. You're not on this team. That's probably the conversation. He's not getting ice time. The Islanders have enough young players that they can utilize that are not Andrew Ladd, because he didn't work in the playoffs. I mean, arguably Dow Cole doesn't either, but what Trotz seems to like about him is that he listens.
Yeah.
He's a simple game, and he's not messing up. He's not a liability. Ladd is a liability. And if I'm not mistaken, which game? I mean, they won 4 of them, but which game against Tampa was Ladd out there at the end of the game? And I just scratched my head like,
it was the only game he was in.
Yeah, the only game, and he just was in the middle of the slot, if I'm not mistaken, and just standing there. And I'm like, yeah, if this guy needed a punctuation on his career, on the end of his career, just because I just watched The Last Dance, it's kind of like why they didn't put the Washington Wizards stuff in The Last Dance. Ladd can just forget about anything after that 120 goal season with the Islanders. His career ended 4 years ago. It's just unfortunately the way that it shook out. But to me, that's what that conversation is. This is up to you, Ladd. How do you want to do it? Yeah. How do you want to end this?
I don't know, Joe. What do you think? Does this happen? Does he try to play? Does he retire? Does he go to LTIR?
He goes kicking and screaming.
Yeah, right.
If he does go to LTIR, and it's one of these, I don't know. And this is just me. It's a gut feeling. I haven't heard anything. I haven't seen anything to suggest it, but I don't think that he's going to retire. Just based off his track history. I mean, this guy, listen, and again, I don't like commenting on things like this because I am as unqualified in terms of playing the game as almost anybody. But he's a shell of his former self.
Right.
And he can't bring to the team what the Islanders initially intended him to bring to the team. And it's, every hockey player, every athlete has to face with this mortality of their playing career. And, I think in terms of just, the Long Island aspect, that it's almost that time. The bell is tolling for Andrew Ladd. And, it's just whether he sees it or not. And I think he's going to be as stubborn as a mule in terms of identifying it or coming to those terms. And that's, like we said before, is up to Lamoriello to kind of make him see that.
Right.
Understand that regardless of what happens, even if you say, well, I'm going to play or I'm going to try and play, it's not happening here. So, try to make it as amicable as possible. Try and make a split as amicable as possible. and try and find a possible avenue that will not only save the Islanders that much needed cash, but offer a glimmer of hope that Andrew Ladd can play next year.
Well, that's why I say if he goes to the AHL, or that at least his contract's in the AHL, saves him $1.5 million. You're
Right.
halfway to Duclair, and then it's
Sure.
just then it's just paper transactions here and there. And I mainly bring up Duclair because it's a lot easier to get to that number, or presumably what he'd be asking for anyway, which would still be a little bit of a raise, I believe, from what he was getting in Ottawa. That's why I bring up Duclair. It's a little bit easier to get to that number.
Yeah.
So Ladd, it's not like he's Johnny Boychuk in the locker room, unless I'm mistaken. It's not like he did this leadership on and off the ice, and he's or it's not like they're keeping him around and he's the Islanders made the Eastern Conference Finals 3 years in a row and he was responsible, like Justin Williams. It's not like you're just keeping this guy around because he's a fan favorite. He's good for the team. He's good in the locker room. You can't really see, he's grown with these players and everyone seems to like each other on this team. So maybe he is a locker room favorite, and he's just a quiet locker room favorite. He's a veteran guy. He's been around. He was quietly with Bridgeport. He did what he had to do. He didn't complain about it. Now, there are younger players that are in the AHL for only 2 years and complain way more than Andrew Ladd should have and had every right to. But, I don't see him as that kind of guy. I mean, he's trying. I'm not under the impression that he's not out there doing what he's got to do. He's obviously working out. He's giving it his all. He's leaving it on the ice. But it's not like, Boychuk was like, all right, I can't, I'm not going to be in offensive positions as much as I used to be. I'm not going to X, Y, and Z. But I'm going to lay my body on the line. And he did. He was diving around, blocking shots, face first, crazy mother. He's kind of doing this stuff, and that's not Ladd's game. Like, I don't even think he can change it. Where does he fit in on that roster?
That's
like, if he stays there, the conversation might be, look, if you stay, we're just not going to be as good. There's nothing we can't make this team better if you stay.
Yeah. His argument though could be, I can't leave money on the table. I got to support my family.
I mean, yeah, then go in the A or go on LTIR. You still get paid, I believe, on LTIR. It comes from a different place.
Right.
His contract might not be insured. I don't know how that works.
Right.
There's all sorts of stuff with that make it a little more complicated as well.
Right.
Where you have to consider that. But
it's my general opinion that we're going to see one of the younger guys up this year at that right wing third line spot, where that's really the only place Andrew Ladd could be if there was a spot for him. But I guess we'll see what happens with that, because like we've been discussing, there is a possibility maybe there is another move coming that we don't really know about. Maybe something's in the works. There's still no official signing for anyone except for Ryan Pulock this offseason. So it'll be interesting. Time will tell. But speaking of those young guys, let's head over to prospects. Good news, just yesterday, Oliver Wahlstrom's returned. He's happy and healthy and playing over in Sweden.
last week. That was last week game.
Was it last week?
Yeah, the video of his goal, which was a sick goal.
Yeah,
that is what you want to see from a guy that needs to, gain some confidence. He's going to come into camp. He's been playing some games against grown men. He's playing consistently. All that's really great. That move that he makes and kind of goes in and scores like that. That's what you want to see.
Yeah.
And as a right-hand guy that, Hosang should have been watching that, shaking his head, because
that was nice.
Footsteps behind him.
Yeah.
In training camp whenever that starts.
Otto Koivula is having a good time too over in what league is he in? I forget.
I don't know. None of us are prospect guys, so we're kind of
however,
he's out of our depth here. But he's either no less than a tier 2 league in Europe.
Yeah, he's got 13 games under his belt over there though, with 11 points, 3 goals, 8 assists. So pretty good for him. And I know you had some comments on Koivula too, because it's just going to be interesting to see where he goes moving forward. He's a center right now for the Islanders, or I guess for the Sound Tigers, but he wasn't always a center. They actually transitioned him there.
Yeah, so I was wondering, so he's in Liga, which is the top Finnish league, which is no joke. Good players come out of that all the time. I think my question is, okay, you got a guy under contract, you know how much he's making. Yes, you have Del Cole and Komarov and blah, 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 blah. But this guy's having a good, anyone that you can just put into your lineup who's already been playing, that's an advantage. They have momentum. He's got some confidence. He can play the wing.
Yep.
And just because he's been playing center, and I believe, I don't know if it was in this administration, this management system with the Islanders, where he was transitioned to center, or he was doing that under Snow and Waiton, whatever. Regardless, he was drafted as a winger. Do you just put him in there? Like, dark horse. No one would have saw that coming.
Right.
But he's playing that. He's already playing. My main thing is you want as many guys as you can that makes sense anyway. He's got an NHL experience. He's played for Trotz before, and even in just cups of coffee here and there. I can't remember. I don't believe he was in the bubble with the team, Koivula. But anyway, thinking about his future with the team, Cizikas might not re-sign. I don't see him not coming back for a league min after the season. But I don't know. I see him on the roster. He's a big guy. He can play. He's got momentum now. He's playing well. I don't know.
The thing for me, it's interesting with him because it hinges on the future for Cizikas, right? The thing is, if Cizikas feels like he could sign for a little bit more money just because of the fact that I've scored 20 goals before, I've been kept down on the fourth line because, it's an identity line, but, maybe I'm due for a little bit of pay raise, then unfortunately you're going to have to say, all right, thank you for your services. We can't really afford to pay you much more. And in my opinion, Koivula can step in and produce similarly to Cizikas. I think that he would be fine on that line. Just because of the fact that the way that Barry Trotz utilizes his lines is, it's the fourth line, but they get more than your prototypical fourth line. He gets about, probably 12 to 15 minutes a night. So I think that he would be fine on that fourth line. Time will tell with that.
Where does he fit right now, though? Because that's what I'm trying to think about. Right now,
he doesn't.
Exactly, because if you want to play him at wing, well, there's the opening on that third line. But say in that perfect world where 2/3 of your third line is JG Pageau at center and Anders Lee on left wing, you want that agile, speedy, skilled guy, that's going to make the plays like that Ho-Sang.
Right.
So it's, right now it's just, a logjam might prevent him, but, just having him in the ranks as a depth option, that's a good thing to have.
Yeah.
But again, the limited action that we did see from him is very similar to what we saw from Michael Dal Cole, where he was playing, but you didn't hear his name, which
right.
an Islander system is a good thing because he wasn't doing anything wrong. But at the same time, you need to kind of have that talisman that's going to step up and make something out of nothing. And is Otto, is Koivula going to be that guy? We'll see.
Right. The thing is, too, there's not much center depth, so you need to keep that a little green, and he's honestly the best one there is. But
I mean, he could play both. No, I'm not saying just permanently move him back to wing, but in a short season where you're going to need guys to step up and be role players and just do what you got to do.
Yeah.
No one would argue if they had a Stanley Cup ring on one of their fingers.
Right.
And they get back after July, they have the summer to kind of get back to where they were, and he can go back to playing center and go back to camp and get everything straightened out for the following season. Cizikas may or may not be back. We'll see how that happens. But I saw his stats and I'm like, I don't know, maybe you just kind of slot him in.
Yeah, he could.
It kind of makes sense. Again, this team can be streaky, and this isn't a season to do things as normal. Everything is not what it used to be. I say, do it. Do something a little bit different. Go out of your comfort zone. That's going to be really hard for Lou. But, go outside of the box a little bit. Do something crazy.
Yeah. And then a couple other namely things. We got some World Junior rosters information here. Simon Holmstrom, our first round pick in 2019, will be playing for Sweden. And Matthias Rajaniemi, our 6th round pick just last draft, will be playing for Finland. So that's pretty good for the pipeline. We'll talk about on probably another episode, the pipeline as a whole, because there's been a couple of articles and, where they rank really in the NHL. Spoiler alert, not too great, but I think that about wraps it up this week for us, guys. Thank you to everyone for listening. Please rate, review, and subscribe wherever you listen to the show. You can follow us on Twitter and Instagram at Nasserman Hockey, and find our work at The Hockey Writers and Joe's work at AM New York, which you can now hear his name on MSG. So if you watch MSG, if you're a Mets fan, an Islander fan, whatever, you can now hear Joe's name on MSG. Pretty freaking cool. You can support the show now by picking up some NHP merch and donating through the new Patreon. Our first newsletter will be out this Friday, December 4th. So sign up to start getting that every week. You can find that on our Twitter accounts, our link tree. You can see it in our bios. Just a click of a button, and you can see all the options there for the Patreon. You can find Joe at Joe Pantorno on Twitter for a wide variety of sports coverage, including the Islanders.
Before we go, new merch dropping soon. Ugly sweater.
Yep.
Something. We're putting it together for the season.
Yep.
I have some other ideas I kind of want to push when we announce it. We'll talk about it off the air.
Yep.
But yeah, that's going to drop soon. Patreon newsletter is going to be cool. We're going to try to do some throwback stuff. We're going to do some analysis. Hoping to do some extra interviews, some extended interviews. It'll be a lot of fun. We have a new editor as well for the newsletter.
We do.
So a fourth member of the show. We're growing. We're doing some cool stuff, some extra content. Her name is Lauren.
Mm-hmm.
She seems great, and a few emails and texts so far. But we'll be getting things together in earnest, getting that newsletter out this week. So sign up, and we'll see you there.
Yeah, we'll see you there. We're growing. We're hoping that you guys follow along with us. So head over to that Patreon. You can see what every stage of whatever you decide to inquire about. It includes, we have the newsletter. There will be some maybe exclusive interviews, other things coming down the pipeline. But that is about it for us, guys. Until next time, everybody. Let's go.